Welcome, students. This session is for BA second year English Literature paper second, that is prose and fiction. In this session, we will continue with this short story by William Faulkner, A Rose for Emily. Before we continue with the text of the story, let's talk about the story a little. Emily is the subject of intense controlling gaze of narrator and residents of Jefferson. So she is the talk of the town, and everybody gazes at her and talks about her and frames an own opinion about this woman. In lieu of actual connection to Emily, the townspeople create subjective and often distorted interpretations of the women they know little about. So, in this connection, what we see is that whatever Emily does, the people of town they create their own distorted interpretations about this woman. They attend her funeral under the guise of respect and honor, but they really want to satisfy their lurid curiosity about the town's most notable eccentric. As we know that Emily is quite eccentric in her nature. We have seen that episode where she turns down those people from a mayor saying that she does not owe any taxes in Jefferson. And people really want to know about this eccentric creature, which they treat as an object. And they are attending a funeral out of that curiosity under the cover of respect and honor towards her. One of the ironic dimensions of the story is that for all the gossip and theorizing, no one guesses the perverse extent to Emily's true nature. And it's quite interesting to note for readers that whatever gossip and framing of Emily is going throughout the story, no one is able to guess to the extent Emily can go in her nature and in her behavior. For most of the story, Emily is seen only from a distance by people who watch her through windows or who glimpse her in her doorway. Because nobody is seen to be quite close to Emily, and everybody is watching Emily from a distance from their windows or from their doorways. The narrator refers to her as an object, an idol. She is not treated like a human being, she is looked upon and judged like an object. This pattern changes briefly during her courtship with Homer Barron when she leaves her house and is frequently out in the world. So, only for a short period of time when she is courting Homer Barron, we can see Emily out in the world and she leaves her house and she moves out. However, others spy on her just as avidly, and she is still relegated to the role of object. But even when she is out with her Homer Barron, people look at her like an object and they love to spy on her. A distant figure who takes on a character according to the whims of those who watch her. So nobody is actually able to know what type of a woman Emily is. Rather, they frame their character according to their own whims, according to their own imaginations. In this sense, the act of watching is powerful because it replaces an actual human presence with a made up narrative that changes depending on who is doing the watching. So, what happens with this watching is that the true sense of this character cannot be known and it is replaced by this made up stories that change according to the imagination of the person who is watching her. No one knows that Emily that exists beyond and what they can see, and her true self is visible to them only after she dies and her secrets are revealed. So, what happens in the story is that no one is able to know that what Emily's true nature is because they are not able to see beyond their imagination, and her true self is revealed only after her death, and all the secrets that are associated with her life get revealed when people come to her funeral. Now let's start with the text. As we know up till now that there is some foul smell which is coming out of Emily's house and the neighbors are objecting to it, and a woman has lodged complaint with the mayor of the town to do something about it. And this way the next day he received two more complaints. So mayor again is getting complaints from more people from the surroundings about the foul smell which is coming out of Emily's house. One from a man who came in a diffident deprecation. So there was one man who came in a very reserved and in a very disapproved manner, and giving the complaint of that. We really must do something about it, Judge. I'd be the last one in the world to bother Miss Emily, but we have got to do something. Now, very seriously, he says this that there has to be done something about it because the foul smell is spreading everywhere, and we don't want to disturb Miss Emily, but we just cannot sit idle. There is something to be done about it. That night, the board of aldermen met. So that night, a meeting was held. Three greybeards and one younger man, the member of Rising Generation. So three old people were there in the meeting as members, and one was from the Rising Generation, a young man. It's simple enough, he said. Send her word to have her place cleaned up. Give her a certain time to do it in, and if she don't, and this young person says, it's a very simple thing. Just give Miss Emily a notice, and if she doesn't get her house cleaned up in a certain period of time, and if she don't, and before he's able to finish that, damn it, sir, Judge Stevens said, will you accuse a lady to her face of smelling bad? But the older generation has some sort of a reservations about these things. So the Judge Stevens, who was an older man, he said you cannot ask a lady on a face that she is not smelling good. So the next night, after midnight, four men crossed Miss Emily's lawn and slunk about the house like burglars, sniffing along the base of the brickwork and the cellar openings, while one of them performed the regular sewing motion with his hand out of sack slung from his shoulder. So what happens is that next night, four people very stealthily they go and they perform this task and they try to spread lime in all the opening areas of our house. They broke open the cellar door and sprinkled lime there. They are sprinkling lime so that the smell of that rotten smell which is coming out of our house is not felt by the neighborhood. And in all the outbuildings, so in all the outbuildings of our house, instead of disturbing Emily in her own house, what they themselves do is that they sprinkle lime everywhere. As they recrossed the lawn, a window that had been dark was lighted, and Miss Emily sat in it, a light behind her, and her upright torso motionless as that of an idol. So when they were crossing the lawn, they saw Miss Emily sitting in that window, and she was sitting so still that she looked like an idol which was sitting in that frame of a window. They crept quietly across the lawn and into the shadow of the locustus that lined the street. After a week or two, the smell went away. So this was the action which was taken by administration of that time, that the lime was sprinkled around the house of Emily, and slowly, without disturbing her, they went away. And after 2 or 1 week, the smell was gone. That was when people had begun to feel really sorry for her. As I told that this story goes back and forth in time. So now narrator is talking about the days when Emily was young and she was of marriageable age. People used to feel sorry for her. The reason for feeling sorry was that people in our town, remembering how old Lady White, her great aunt, had gone completely crazy at last, believed that Graysons held themselves a little too high for what they really were. So, great aunt of Emily, she had gone crazy in the last days of her life because she too was single, and the family did not marry her to anyone because they held themselves very high and they could not find a suitable boy matching their status, their aristocratic status. So, and the same was happening with Emily also. Because she was remaining unmarried for such a long time, the people were feeling sorry for her. We had long thought of them as a tableau. For a long time, people had some sort of an image, some sort of a very paused image of Emily and her father. Miss Emily, they used to imagine as a slender figure in white in the background, her father a spraddled silhouette in the foreground, his back to her and clutching a horsewhip. So this is the image, the fixed image that people had in their mind about the stern and strict father with a horsewhip in his hand, and Lady Emily is in the background of her father, The two of them framed by the back flung front door. This was the image that was framed in the back when one opens the front door of the house, and people imagine them as the image or as the picture in the frame. So when she got to be 30 and was still single, we were not pleased exactly. So, from these lines, we come to know that how people are framing their own opinion, and they are framing their own stories from their imagination, and they are very interested in each and every single detail of Miss Emily's life. So he says that when she was 30 and she was still single, people were not pleased exactly, but they were vindicated. They were having some sort of justification in their mind for that. Even with the insanity in the family, she wouldn't have turned down all her chances if they had really materialized. Now they are thinking that no matter how insane the family is, if they got some nice proposal, they must not have turned it down and should have materialized that. When her father died, it got about that the house was all that was left to her. So anything which is happening in Emily's life is a gossip of the town, and they have their own curious judgments about it. So when her father died, people came to know that Emily was left only with the house and with no property other than this house that in which she was living. And in a way, people were glad, people were happy. At last they could pity Miss Emily, being left alone and a pauper. She had become humanized. They thought that now all that aristocratic standards, they are going to go low, and they were happy. At last they could be able to pity Miss Emily because she's alone and she's poor. So now she'll have some touch of humanity in her. Now she too would know the old thrill and the old despair of Penny, more or less. Now people thought that because her father has died, she will come to know the value of money, more or less. The day after his death, all ladies prepared to call at the house and offer condolence and aid. So the day Emily's father died, every woman in the house and in the nearby houses were prepared to go for the condolence and aid her, as is our custom. Miss Emily met them at the door, but Miss Emily did not invite any of the women inside the house. Dressed as usual with no trace of grief on her face, so she was dressing up as usual and she was not looking any sad. She told them that her father was not dead. So this is really strange for the readers. That Miss Emily, what she says is that her father was not dead. She did that only for 3 days, with the ministers calling on her and the doctors trying to persuade her to let them dispose of the body. She kept the dead body of her father for 3 days in the house. She did not let the dead body go, saying that the father has not died. And ministers, they were trying to persuade her to give the dead body. Just as they were about to resort to the law and force, she broke down and they buried her father quickly. They were just about to enforce law on her, and that time she broke and they carried the dead body away to get it buried. We did not say that she was crazy then. We believed she had to do that. So this behavior of Emily was not the crazy behavior in the eyes of narrator or the townspeople, because they thought that that was quite natural on her part to behave like that. We remembered that all the young men her father had driven away, and we knew that with nothing left, she would have to cling to that which had robbed her, as people will. And people thought that because now Emily is left with nothing and she is poor, so she is trying to catch hold of the thing that has taken everything away from her life, and that is her father's dead body. We'll continue with the story in my next session. I hope you like it.